very proud, independent country that wants to stand up on the world stage and say, we are here, we're no better than anybody else, we're no worse than anybody else, we'll make mistakes along the way, but any mistakes we make will be our mistakes rather than those of others being imposed upon us. And we hope to build a new, a better, a fairer, a more inclusive Scotland, where things like poverty and inequality and racism and homelessness are things that people discuss in history classes, because those are the things we will have tackled as a society. So that's where I want us to go tonight. That's the type of discussion I want us to have tonight. But just by way of introduction, tonight's meeting's been organised by local branch of Solidarity. And Solidarity is a political party that is unashamedly socialist. We believe not just in an independent Scotland, but we believe in an independent socialist Scotland. We believe in an independent republic. We believe that the people are sovereign, that there is no place for an unelected monarchy in this new modern democracy that we hope to build. Not everyone will share our vision of an independent socialist republic. Some people just want independence. Some people want independence and maybe they want to retain the monarchy. Some people want independence and they want to stay within the European Union. Quite frankly, I want independence so that we can begin to do the things that need to be done in our country without being told by others that we can't do it. And in order to do that, Solidarity doesn't just want independence, we want sovereignty, which means we have a difference of opinion with the lead political party in the independence movement, which of course is the SNP. Because the SNP believes we should be independent and members of the European Union. We believe we should be independent and then we should conduct a debate and give the people of Scotland the right to decide on that on the basis of being independent. Just some people might say, oh, but you know, we've already had a vote on the European Union and 62% voted to remain. That's right. And what's happening now is Scotland is being dragged out of that relationship with the European Union against its wishes. There's no doubt about that. I don't want to stand here and say that because Solidarity believes that we should be out of what we believe is a big business club, a union which, quite frankly, doesn't have the interests of ordinary working class people at heart. It has the interests of big business at heart. It has driven over this last couple of decades, it has driven with gusto the drive to privatisation, liberalisation of all sorts of public services, whether they be in transport, whether they be in health, whether they be in education. And anyone who thinks the European Union is some form of nice society that's going to give a handout to the poor should think about the imposition of austerity in places like Ireland, in places like Greece, in places like Portugal. Should think for a moment what the European Union has done up to now in relation to Catalonia and their disgraceful silence in relation to the tyranny of Madrid in respect of Catalonia and their desire to be able to express their will for an independent Catalonia. The European Union, in our opinion, would be a future impediment to making Scotland the type of Scotland that I want it to be, because I want Scotland to be a country where the land and the wealth and the manufacturing capacity, the ability to produce, is owned and controlled by the people of Scotland, not by Texas billionaires like your man at Ineos. How dare this individual, how dare he have control of such a strategically important part of Scotland's manufacturing, to control the oil manufacturing and refining. It's unbelievable that we allow that to happen. This man can sack trade unionists, can witch hunt, can lower pensions, lower wages, with oblivion. Well, I tell you what, in my vision of an independent Scotland, he'll be getting his jotters. He'll be getting his jotters. And such an important part of our economy will be owned and controlled by us collectively. Just like our land, just like our water, just like our oil. I remember, and some of you will have been involved in the first wave towards independence, and we used to have a slogan, didn't we? It's Scotland's oil. It's Scotland's oil. Brilliant. I was looking just today at a wee snippet in the paper, and it was about a country not dissimilar to Scotland, who also discovered oil. And what they did is they set up an oil fund. Some of you will be aware of that. And there's this wee snippet here that tells us that in 2017, that country, Norway, was able to invest £131 billion, £131,000 million interest accrued from its oil fund. Interest accrued. It has an oil fund that currently is $1.1 trillion worth of value. The interest that they were able to extract in the year of 2017 was $131 billion to spend in public services. Brothers and sisters, when we say it's Scotland's oil, we should mean it's Scotland's oil. I don't want American companies or any other companies owning and controlling our oil. I want us to own and control our oil. I want us to use the ownership of that oil to invest properly in renewable energy sources. I want Scotland to become the world leader in renewable energies, and I want that publicly owned as well. I don't want private companies to be given incentives to invest in renewable energy. I want the government to invest in renewable energy so that we as a country, all of the citizens within that country, benefit from the surplus that's generated by the production of something which is essential to life: energy, water, land. All of these things, as a socialist, we believe should be part of our common wealth. Our common wealth. So as a member of Solidarity, it's clear that our vision of an independent Scotland is that it is a stepping stone towards a socialist Scotland, a republic. Now, it is clear that not everyone will share that vision, and that's fine. The independence family, the independence movement is like a big tent, isn't it? And in that tent, there is room for many discussions and many groups. As long as we're all there for independence, as long as we all respect one another, as long as we're all tolerant of one another, there'll be some in there who think, oh well, independence will be good for business because we'll be able to make more profit. Fine. There'll be some in there who think, I just want independence because Scotland should be its own country and I don't really care about how the economy's run. That's fine as well. But we think that independence isn't the end of the journey. That independence is only the start of the journey. We want independence. And people say, yeah, but Tommy, you're independent. Nothing will change. And they're right. Let's be clear about it. A day after independence, nothing will change. Except the ability to change everything. That's the point. That's the point. And it won't happen in a few months or even a few years. It could take a generation. But we have to understand that without grasping that nettle, without taking control of our own destiny, we are tied to a rotten corpse of a sinking ship that's going to drag us further and further down into that race to the bottom of privatisation, of lower wages, of 0 hours contracts, And by the way, I know some of you think, oh, it can't get any worse. It's going to get worse. Why? Well, think about it. From the multi-millionaire right-wing Brexiteers and what they see about Brexit, because their idea of Brexit isn't to do with those on the left and those in the trade union movement who are opposed to the bureaucracy of the European Union. What they see is the opportunity to build up new trade deals with different countries on the basis of we will lower standards. Come and invest. The wages will be lower, the hours will be longer, the pensions will be reduced. That will be the attraction to the Americas of the world. That will be the attraction to the Chinas and the Indias of the world. Come and invest here. We will make sure the population works for less and works longer. That's their vision of the future. And that's a vision that we will be attached to while we remain part of our UK. Brothers and sisters, what this meeting about tonight is to say that we believe the Scottish Parliament is something that is worth fighting for, that is worth defending. It has its limitations, of course it has. I sat in the Parliament for 8 years. I know that it's got its limitations, but I also know from those very early years the advantages of the Scottish Parliament. I remember having a discussion with my friend and comrade Dennis Canavan, who was elected in 1999 as an independent member of that Parliament for Falkirk. And I was elected as a list member for Glasgow. And the first thing I said I was going to do, because it was a transformation in some respects, in 1999 that I was elected to the Parliament and went in there with a wee suit on and a red tie. Because a number of years earlier, I'd been wearing a different attire. I'd been wearing a wee stripy blue shirt and standard issue blue denims from Saucton's Hotel at Her Majesty's pleasure. Because in 1992 I was in jail. I was in jail for my part in trying to prevent the first poll tax warrant sale, where a lone parent from Inverclyde who'd contacted the poll tax busters office in Glasgow in tears, desperate, because she returned from shopping one day to find the lock in her door had been changed. A note had been put in the letterbox telling her that she was to go down to the local sheriff officers of Abernethy McIntyre on the High Street, where she would pick up her new keys, because sheriff officers had earlier that day forcibly entered her home when she wasn't there, removed her TV, a display cabinet and a coffee table, and were holding them to sell them at a public warrant sale in order to pay off her poll tax debt. And of course that was nonsense, because her poll tax debt was several £100. The combined value of the goods that had been taken were less than £100. So it was nothing to do with recovering debt and everything to do with public humiliation. That's what they wanted to do. And when on the 1st of October of 1991 the sheriff officers turned up in Glasgow city centre, in the wee yard up at the Tron Gate, hoping to sell that woman's furniture, what they were doing was symbolic. They were going to send a message to everyone in Scotland: get into line, pay your poll tax, or this will happen to you. And that's why it was important that me and several hundred others turned up first thing in the morning at 7 and surrounded the blue transit van that the sheriff officers were sitting in with the furniture in the back, and refused to move, refused to budge, despite threats from the police, hundreds of whom had been mobilised to move us. We said, no, we're not moving. Subsequently, the police officer had to inform the sheriff officer that he couldn't guarantee his public safety, and therefore the warrant sale was cancelled. What a delight it was to hear the sheriff officer, because he had to make the announcement under the law. He had to announce that today's scheduled warrant sale has been cancelled. That woman got her stuff back. She was very grateful. Unfortunately for me, I'd been interdicted from being there. I'd been told the day before, this legal document saying you're not allowed to go. And I said, well, what have you got to do, you know? So I took the letter along, and of course I ripped it up and threw it in the air. Quite an expensive wee piece of paper, I suppose, quite valuable in some respects. It cost me 6 months of my liberty, you know. I remember my lawyer saying at the time, don't worry about it, Tommy, these court orders are broke every day. Don't worry, nothing will happen. Nothing will happen. It's usually broken with partners that have got interdicts against abusive partners coming near them. Nobody ever gets to jail, don't worry about it. A few months later he was saying, I'm sorry about that one, I got that one wrong. And I get 6 months in jail for ripping up a wee piece of paper and helping to stop a warrant sale. But it was worth it. It was worth it, and if I had the decision to make tomorrow, I'd make the exact same decision 100 times over, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. And what's important is, and the reason I link that story to the Parliament, is a number of years later I was elected. I don't know if you're aware of this, but while I was in jail, I stood for the council and I got elected, believe it or not. Usually people stand for the council, then they go to jail, but I did it the other way around. I went to jail and then got elected to the council. It's the first time it's ever happened, by the way. Brilliant, fantastic. It was the easiest campaign I've ever fought. Fantastic. But one of the things I said when I stood for the election to the newly reconvened Scottish Parliament in 1999 is that I never ever wanted someone to go through that humiliation ever again. And therefore I brought in the first ever private members' bill to the Scottish Parliament to abolish pindons and warrant sales. And I discussed it with Dennis Canavan. I said, Dennis, I want you to support me. I discussed it with Alec Neil. I said, Alec, I want you to support me. I said to John McCallion of the Labour Party, I said, John, I want you to support me. I want them to become co-sponsors. And Dennis said to me, he said, Tommy, I'm so pleased that you've managed to introduce this and you've managed to get it into the system. He says, I tried 13 years ago in Westminster, and there have been 8 separate attempts in the last 40 years to find the time to try and abolish warrant sales at Westminster. And every single time there wasn't any time. Westminster wouldn't give any time to discuss that issue. Within 11 months of the Scottish Parliament being convened, the abolition of pindons and warrant sales bill was discussed and became the first bill to ever pass in the Scottish Parliament. That's why the Scottish Parliament became important, because it could take up issues that hitherto had been ignored by Westminster. We took up that issue, we developed that issue, and ever since, the Scottish Parliament, in my opinion, has been a leader on issues. Some issues people say, well, it's not that important. Fox hunting, well, actually, I've got to disagree. Okay, it's not going to put food on people's tables, but I think it was important that the Scottish Parliament took a position of stopping cruelty to animals, of the pursuit of the unspeakable in pursuit of the uneatable, the toffs, blood sports. It was important that Scotland said no first. It was important, I think, that Scotland took a stand in relation to smoking in public places. Everybody used to have a go at, disgrace, that's rubbish, you shouldn't be doing that, that's a waste of time. Now everybody's doing that. It was important that Scotland said no to tuition fees and retained the idea of education based on a right, not a privilege, and not what your ma and da could afford to pay. These are things that the Scottish Parliament has been prepared to lead on. And the truth is, the Scottish Parliament is now in danger of being unravelled, because the Brexit bill going through Westminster contains the catch-all clause that all of the currently devolved issues will be taken back to Westminster, and they may redevolve them. They may redevolve them. And some people say, well, that's the sovereignty of the British Parliament. They're allowed to do that. And the truth is, from a legal point of view, I agree with them. Legally, the British Parliament's sovereign. They could overturn the Scotland Act tomorrow. It's true. That's why we need to go here. That's why we need to abandon it, so that they can't abolish the Scotland Act and the Scottish Parliament. We have a situation where we have a meeting tonight, quite appropriate, 13th of March. Because on the 13th of March last year, Nicola announced that she was going to bring forward a motion into the Scottish Parliament in order to pave the way for Indy Ref 2. And true to her word, on the 20th of March, 1 week later, that said motion was introduced. That motion read that the Parliament acknowledges the sovereign right of the Scottish people to determine the form of government best suited to their needs, and therefore mandates the Scottish Government to take forward discussions with the UK Government on the details of an order under Section 30 of the Scotland Act 1998 to ensure that the Scottish Parliament can legislate for a referendum to be held that will give the people of Scotland a choice over the future direction and governance of their country at a time and with a question and franchise determined by the Scottish Parliament, which would most appropriately be between the autumn 2018, when there is clarity over the outcome of the Brexit negotiations, and around the point at which the UK leaves the EU in spring 2019. Brothers and sisters, that motion was debated in the Scottish Parliament. Actually, was over a 2-week period, and then the vote was delayed because of a terrorist incident in London. It was eventually voted on, and by some 69 votes to 59, the Scottish Parliament endorsed that. There was an amendment from the Greens, which was only an amendment, no deletions, and that amendment was to ensure that 16 and 17-year-olds and EU citizens were allowed to vote in that subsequent referendum. That was accepted as an amendment. Brothers and sisters, our argument here tonight is that mandate is democratically achieved. It is live, and it has to be used. It has to be used. I would prefer, personally, and I'll make some points about it, I would prefer September of this year. I would prefer a short 4-month campaign. By the way, why have it any longer? Why have it any longer? The arguments are by and large known, and the less time we give to that unionist brigade to muster the bias media, the better. Let's have a short, sharp, educated, enthusiastic campaign where we put the facts, where we raise the aspirations, where we say loud and clear that all of the lies that were told in 2014 now stand exposed. Further powers my arse. The vow wasn't worth the paper that it was written on. That's the reality. And the problem with Project Fear, the big problem with Project Fear, in my opinion, is it's a one-trick pony. It's a one-trick pony. You see, you can tell the pensioners through your organised phone banks and your targeting and your dropping of stories that they're going to lose their pensions in an independent Scotland. You can tell the people that B&Q is going to close and the Royal Bank of Scotland is going to close. You can tell the shipyard workers that there'll be no more frigate orders in the Clyde. You can put out stories about how, if we vote yes, there will be a new depression across Europe because of it. All of those stories were real. All of that crap was promoted, propagandised, pushed by the organs of the state, particularly the British Bias Corporation, but all of the other Muppets in Fleet Street, the hired liars. Those were the types of stories that were put out there. Well, now we know, brothers and sisters, that Royal Bank jobs and B&Q will close anyway. Now we know that the Clyde won't get orders anyway. Now we know that pensions aren't safe anyway. Now we can go to the people of Scotland, secure in the knowledge that that one-trick pony of lies won't work again. Won't work again. And when people suggest, yeah, but you've had your referendum, nothing's changed, I beg to differ, brothers and sisters. I beg to differ from a number of points of view. First and foremost was the 2015 general election. If ever there was a change of circumstances that justified a new referendum, it was surely that tsunami of Scottish politics, that unbelievable result, political earthquake. 59 seats. 59 seats, and 56 of them go to the only party of the mainstream parties that supported independence. 56 out of 59. By the way, it should have been 57. It should have been 57. I've got to say, and I've got friends in the Green Party, I appeal to them not to stand in the seat in Dumfries where they split the vote and they allowed Mundell to stay in. Please, let's learn the lessons of that, folks. Let's learn the lessons of that. When electoral alliances are necessary, let's swallow our pride and let's swallow our own ambitions and let's unite around the Independence Party that's able to unite the biggest votes. That election was an absolute earthquake. Some of you will be older than me, some of you will be younger than me. But hopefully all of you will recognise that the idea in Scotland that the Labour Party was reduced to one MP at a general election, that represents an earthquake. That represents changed conditions that justifies a new Indy referendum. That alone, in my opinion. Then you had the 2016 Scottish elections, where again the SNP won that election. I've got to say, again, and this time, an opposite criticism. I've just criticised the Green Party for the lack of electoral coalition knowledge and understanding. The SNP were guilty of it in 2016. The SNP's position in 2016 should have been quite clear. Vote SNP with your first vote, vote pro-independence with your second vote. That should have been the position of the SNP. The SNP should have said, choose between any of the other pro-independence parties with your second vote, and that way you wouldn't have wasted almost 1 million votes, because that's what happened. That's what happened. 1 million votes were wasted. And when people like myself were trying to point that out, we were getting assaulted online by apparent friends saying, oh, you're just doing this to promote yourself. Well, I've got to say to you, our position, Solidarity's position in our election was quite clear. Vote for one of the other pro-independence parties. Yes, we want your vote, but we're not saying vote for us, we're saying vote for one of the other pro-independence parties. If we'd done that, the complexion of that Scottish Parliament wouldn't have been a 69-59 vote. It would have been an 80 or a 90 vote for the new referendum, because the Tories and the Red Unionists wouldn't have won the seats that they won if it hadn't been for the disaster on the list that happened in 2016. Then we've got the 2017 general election. And you see, this is getting used in some quarters. It's a horribly biased and warped and distorted narrative that's getting promoted by the media and all their unionist friends, you would think the SNP lost. You would think they lost the election. The SNP in 2017 won the second biggest electoral triumph in their entire history. But apparently it's a loss, and it shows that there's no appetite for independence. Brothers and sisters, the truth is, in 2016 the SNP fought for the right to call another referendum, and they won. They look at their constituency vote, they won hands down. In 2017, tactically the SNP, in my opinion wrongly, fought that election saying, no, it's not about Indy Ref 2, despite the fact the unionists spoke about nothing else. And you know, that's a wee bit like getting into the boxing ring and saying, I'm going to box you, but I'm putting my right hand behind my back. It was silly. It was tactically wrong. We should have had the SNP in 2017 saying, we've already won the mandate last year. This is to get a renewed mandate. This is to build up that mandate. Instead of that, they said, no, it's got nothing to do with it. And the SNP's vote between 2015 and 2017 was 500,000 lighter. Most of whom, 75% of whom, never voted for anybody else. They stayed at home. They stayed at home. Now, my argument, people may argue differently, my argument is because they weren't enthused the way they were. 85% turned out in the referendum. Massive turnout in 2015 for the SNP. And then 2 years later, when you're fighting an election and you're saying, oh, it's not about independence, is it any wonder a lot of people say, oh, well, I'm not voting then. I'm not going to bother. 500,000 less votes, 75% of whom stayed at home. That's the result of not putting it as a priority. However, the point is, that's 3 elections in a row that the party of independence has won in Scotland. If that's no a mandate, what the hell is a mandate? And of course you then add in, and by the way, you don't need it, in my opinion, but let's add it in anyway, the Brexit result and the fact that 62% of Scotland voted one way, different from our UK, and yet Scotland's going to be dragged against its will down the Swanee and down the tubes along with Westmonster. That has got to surely be enough to convince you that it's changed circumstances that justifies a new referendum. Some people say, yeah, okay, and I've heard this argument, I've read the argument. Why don't we wait until 2022 and let's try and win the Scottish Parliament election again? Brothers and sisters, I've got to say this to you, 2 things. One, please waken up and smell the coffee about what's happening right now. The Scottish Parliament has been undermined. The Scottish Parliament and all that it stands for is having powers removed from it by the Westminster government, here and now, by a party with less than 20% support here in Scotland, thinks it's got a mandate to do these things. It doesn't. By the time we get to 2022, we may find that the idea he has ever been able to hold another referendum has gone, has vanished. And who's to say by the time we get to that stage that the unionists will have built up the level of confusion, the level of distrust, that say, for instance, the SNP don't win a majority in the Scottish Parliament in 2022. Some people say to me, Tommy, it's a gamble to go in September because we might not win. By the way, hey, doesn't matter what fight you're involved in. Doesn't matter what fight, you're always running the risk that you might lose. But one thing's certain above all else: if you don't fight, you'll never win. If you don't fight, you'll never win. And those who say we run the risk of losing if we go too early, they're using the opinion polls as the barometer. And that's something we have to take up head on here. I've got articles in front of me which I think are compelling in relation to that argument. This argument here, and this is from the 23rd of January 2013. 23rd of January 2013. It's in the Guardian newspaper. Support for Scottish independence slumps to the lowest level since devolution. And it's all about the social attitude survey, apparently a detailed examination of the attitudes of the people of Scotland, and it says only 23% support independence. Only 23%. And then you go to the Scotsman newspaper of the 12th of October 2013. 11 months before the referendum. Scottish independence support at only 25%. And it goes on to talk about how support for Scottish independence has flatlined. It has stayed at 25% successively for the last 3 months. This spells disaster for the Yes movement, according to this article. Brothers and sisters, that's what they said in January 2013. That's what they said in October of 2013. Based on those who are telling us we shouldn't be going for the Indy Ref 2 the now, they shouldn't have went for Indy Ref 1. We shouldn't have went for the first one. Brothers and sisters, we went for 25%. And in less than 12 months, despite the absolute Niagara Falls of lies and abuse and distortions, despite all of the media trying to paint this disastrous picture, we went from 25 to 45%. Brothers and sisters, we've never fallen below it since 2014. In other words, we're going into this referendum not in 23, not in 25%. We're going into this referendum on 45%. And on the back of a short, sharp, enthusiastic, inspiring, aspirational campaign that doesn't talk about the minutiae and the details. It talks about the hopes and the desires of the people of Scotland, that concentrates on the constitutional issue of our right to govern ourselves. That's what we should be concentrating on. And based on a campaign with our army. Some people say that we've got a sleeping army. Some of us haven't been sleeping. Some of us have still been organising meetings and events and demonstrations. But undoubtedly, there is a Yes army waiting to be called to arms. The Unionists, on the other hand, are deflated. They are stuck in their project fear. They're stuck in their negativity. We have got hope in our hearts. Based on a short 4-month campaign, brothers and sisters, we can go from 45 to 65. That's something. That's something that's within our abilities. We don't need to. We don't need to. All we need to do is go from 45 to 51. That's all we need. Brothers and sisters, anybody in the independence family and the movement who thinks we can't do that, I don't know where they've been for the last few years. 2014 set Scotland alight politically. We raised the hopes and aspirations of young people in a way that has never been done before. We engaged our whole population. Never before had you done 85% turnout in a referendum. 85%. And all of the psephology shows us that the majority of young people, up to 70% of young people, voted yes. The majority of the working class voted yes. The people who voted no were the people who Project Fear targeted, the elderly and the wealthy. Now, personally, I don't think we're going to win the wealthy round. Because the truth is, in an independent Scotland, the super wealthy aren't going to be as wealthy. And I don't think we should cry about that. Because they'll still have their 2 and 3 cars, and they can still have 4 and 5 holidays, but they might not have 5 and 6 cars, and they might not have 7 and 8 holidays, and they might only have 1 house or 2 instead of the 3 or 4. Is that something that we should be worried about? Should we be crying about? No. So we might never win the wealthy, but I think we can win the elderly. I think the elderly know in their hearts that they were wrong to do what they'd done, because they stomped on the dreams of the young. And I don't think they'll do it again. I think they've seen through the lies now the way most people have done. And that's why I appeal to the SNP. The SNP, who in my opinion, I'm a Solidarity member, I'm a socialist, but quite frankly I have absolutely no problem in endorsing the idea that we unite at Scottish and general elections around the idea of voting for the SNP. And some people will say, and this is an important argument, it's an argument that's going to lead to more confusion, folks. That's why the delay could be even more problematic. Some people will say, Tommy, you're a socialist, for God's sake. How can you possibly say vote SNP now that the Labour Party at a UK level has changed, now that Jeremy Corbyn is the leader of that party, been twice elected? And I'm going to say some things here that not everybody will agree on, but I'm going to say them because they're in my heart. And that is that I don't attack Jeremy Corbyn personally. I know Jeremy. I met him way back in 1989 when I was invited to address the campaign group of Labour MPs down in Westminster and asked them to endorse and support the mass campaign of non-payment. And Jeremy was one of those who said yes, along with Tony Benn, along with Terry Fields, along with Dave Nellis, along with a whole number of left Labour MPs at that time. And Jeremy, since then, on I would say 90% at least of the issues that have faced us, I would say I shared his opinions, particularly on international war, poverty, inequality. But Jeremy, I say not as a critic, but as a comrade, I say to you, please raise the blinkers from your eyes. It cannot be right, it cannot be proper that you as an individual and other socialists within the Labour Party will fight tooth and nail, and rightly, for Palestinian independence, for Venezuela's independence, for Cuba's independence, but not for Scotland's independence. I appeal to Jeremy Corbyn, I appeal to the left in the Labour Party. If you seriously harbour any thoughts of recovery here in Scotland, yes, your economic policies and your change of tack from that horrible Blairite position will be welcomed by people in Scotland. In actual fact, I think it's helped the SNP as well. Because I don't think we would have seen the statements from the SNP at the end of last year at the conference, which were very welcome. Statements about the establishment of a public energy company. Statements about the need for more public ownership, looking towards the railways and examining public ownership. I think the fact that the Labour Party has moved to the left has helped push the argument within the SNP to the left as well, so I welcome that. But the Labour Party will never recover in Scotland until it raises the blinkers from its eyes to our democratic right to an independent Scotland. That's what they have to do. What might happen between now and 2022 and another general election, another Scottish election, what might happen is confusion could reign. Majorities could be reduced. We might lose the ability to call another referendum. I don't think we should run that danger, folks. I don't think we should risk it. I would appeal to you and to our wider audience via Independence Live here tonight. I would appeal to us as a movement that we don't shout each other down, that we don't shout traitor or treachery at those who disagree with us, but that we argue cogently that from a tactical point of view, we have to use the mandate that we have. From a political point of view, and I'll finish on this point. From a political point of view, I've spent some time there talking about the value of the Scottish Parliament, talking about the good things that the Scottish Parliament did. Politically, folks, think about this. The Scottish Parliament doesn't use its mandate. What's any future mandate worth? If you're going to have a 2-week debate, if you're going to have a quite ferocious exchange of views across the floor of the Scottish Parliament that ends up in a 69 to 59 vote and a majority for this mandate, for Indy Ref 2, and you don't use it, that, in my opinion, undermines the credibility of that Scottish Parliament. It means that any future discussion, any future debate, people will say, this doesn't matter. They never do what they say they're going to do anyway. Well, folks, we've got enough of that in politics. I think we're all scunnered, aren't we? With people that say one thing before they're elected and do another thing after they're elected. I think we would be super scunnered if we have a Scottish Parliament saying they're going to do something and then no doing it. So please, I appeal to our wider independence movement. I appeal to the SNP, who by and large I think are doing a good job in difficult circumstances. Yes, I wish they would make a bigger stand against the austerity cuts at a local authority level. I think they have to stop implementing cuts and start fighting cuts. Let's have more defiance and less compliance is what I think we need at a local authority level. But if you look at the other measures that they're taking, there's no doubt in my mind that they are doing a good job in difficult circumstances. But I think they risk absolutely undermining and taking the wind out the sails of the independence movement if they don't use the mandate. So please, brothers and sisters, do what you can on your social network sites, on your various campaign groups. Please, let's unite around the idea of use the mandate. Thanks very much. You want to take a break? Folks, as usual, and I apologise particularly for yourselves who are sitting here and maybe those that are sitting at home as well for speaking too long. What I've been advised from the organisers of the meeting is, because there's teas and coffees and lovely big cookies up the back there, that we should have a 10-minute break to allow you to use the toilet, get a coffee or a tea and get a wee cookie. And have to ask for online questions as well. I think we've had a decent online audience, so if there's any online questions, but obviously you in here tonight, you'll be the first ones to get your questions. So if you want to get a wee coffee, a wee tea, and then we'll come back in 10 minutes and we'll take some questions. Thanks very much, folks. Right. we go live, but we'll try and get things wound up around about. Okay, folks, welcome back. Independence Live is now with us again. As I've said earlier, is Ian up? Brilliant, Ian. We have around half an hour or so. We don't need to use up the full half hour. It's been a long evening. We've been here almost an hour and a half already, but this is your opportunity to either make points or ask questions. I certainly don't have a monopoly on wisdom, so if anybody has issues or points that I've missed out and you think I shouldn't have missed out, or things that I should have emphasised a bit more or a bit less, then please feel free to raise them in the next 15 or 20 minutes or so. So, can I see, first I've seen Sean there. Hi, Sean. Is there anybody with a question? Oh, there's some online questions, but I want to take some questions for the audience first, if there are some.
Is that working? Yep. Tommy, you don't believe this actually looking at me, by the way, but tonight actually, I'm not speaking on behalf of, I'm speaking as of one of them, an old age pensioner, right? So-called. So look at me. You were actually made mention in your speak there actually about the role between Project Fear, pensions and young people. I want to make a point actually that I looked not so long ago at a table of the level of pensions throughout Europe and in Mexico. Just so that the people like myself who are now pensioners get the picture. Out of 30 countries mentioned in Europe, and as a matter of fact Mexico is mentioned as well, from 1 to 30, Britain was 30th in the level of pensions. But I think we should be actually linking between the young people and the older people, the older adults they call themselves, because not so long ago, people, I was a young person. So come together, fight together for that level of understanding in economics that we're talking about. Thank you.
John.
Tommy, I'm always quite proud, you know, when I see things on Newsnight or some other news items, when they go, oh well, we're not getting this in England, but they get free tuition in Scotland, they get free school meals in Scotland, they don't pay prescription charges in Scotland. And I think it was yesterday they were talking about the baby boxes, and they're going, they get these baby boxes in Scotland, they didn't get that in England. And I always feel great about that, you know, it's great. But the problem is, Tommy, we've still got food banks. So there's only so much that the Scottish Parliament can do, and until we get independence, we're always going to have food banks. But even then, it's still no guaranteed that we'll not have food banks. So I would like to know, you know, what you would do about the poverty situation. I mean, the fact is, we've got, 240,000 children in Scotland still in poverty. So the Scottish Parliament is clearly not enough to solve the problems of the people in Scotland. And I'd just like to make one final point about pensioners, because I'm one myself. And a wee disagreement with you here. It wasn't just fear that made pensioners vote no at the 2014 referendum, in my opinion. A lot of it was a loyalty, a misguided loyalty towards the Labour Party. And I think because that's a generation that always voted Labour, their parents voted Labour and their grandparents, whatever, if the Labour Party was there, was invented then. But it was just a traditional thing with people, and it was so hard to get them away from the Labour Party. And in my area, in Fife, it was Gordon Brown, who is God, still God to a lot of people, despite his lies, and despite the fact that he was involved in an illegal war in Iraq. So the loyalty towards Gordon Brown was really paramount in my area. So I think that had a lot to do with pensioners voting no instead of yes.
Yep, I think that's a very fair point, Jock, that the Labour Party's role in 2014 was despicable. There's absolutely no doubt about it. I often tell the story about the night of the referendum, and I was invited into the heart of that horrible beast at British Bias Corporation headquarters to be on their referendum show. and I was sitting next to Lord Reid, who was his usual obnoxious self, and him and his Tory chum were chuckling away and laughing about how they were clear that this was a great victory because they'd saved the Union. This is a former communist who used to believe in revolution, actually celebrating the saviour of the British Union. And then a tweet come through, and wee Glenn Campbell read out this tweet, and it was from Joanne Lamont, who was at the time the leader of the Scottish branch of the British Labour Party. And Joanne had tweeted, "Great victory for Labour tonight. Great victory for Labour tonight." And I said then, and remind any Labour person that I ever meet, I remind them of this, I said then that what Joanne Lamont should do, and what the Labour Party should do, is they should go and look up the term Pyrrhic victory. Pyrrhic victory. Because it evolved from a Greek general who, in order to win one particular battle in the course of a war, he expended so many of his troops and he put so much effort into winning that battle that he ended up losing the war. And that's where the term Pyrrhic victory came from. And I said, that's what Labour's won tonight, a Pyrrhic victory. You may have won this one vote, but you've lost the hearts and the minds and the loyalty of the working class of Scotland. And perhaps even that most loyal section of the Labour vote, which is the elderly vote, there's no doubt about it, but even that elderly vote, I think, has been shaken and stirred. And I think as long as we take up full frontal the lies that they were told and take on board the points that have been made about what is it you're fighting to save, the lowest pension in the whole of the European Union, let's go for independence and let's build the best pension in the European Union. That's the argument. We, I think, Jock, in terms of your general question about poverty and how we're going to change and how we're going to go from these disgraceful food banks and the fact that people require them and depend on them, we don't knock in any way the efforts of people who work in food banks or the people who rely on food banks. Unfortunately, they are a lifeline for a lot of people who have been sanctioned and who have found themselves without a penny to spend. But when we hear the unionists tell us, oh, don't vote for independence, the banks are going to leave, the Royal Bank's going to shut down, we say, no, the only bank shutting down in an independent Scotland are going to be food banks, because we won't need food banks in an independent Scotland. I think it's dead important that we don't, symbols are important in politics. They're not everything. I'm not somebody who thinks that waving a flag is the most important thing to do. And I don't think that independence is about changing the Union Jack to the saltire and everything will be all right then. Changing the flag doesn't change people's lives, but changing the flag gives us the opportunity to change the pension, to change the wage level, to change employment security, to get rid of 0 hours contracts. It gives us the ability to change everything. And that's the arguments, Jock, I think we have to take up with even more gusto this time around than we did in 2014.
Hi Tommy, Paul McCartney from Kilbride. Thanks again for coming along tonight. I just wanted to make a point. Obviously I agree with pretty much all of what you've said tonight. I just want to reflect a wee bit about from our own experiences of campaigning for independence. And one of which is what you touched on is obviously the fear of losing. I heard a chap on the event that was held by the guys at Indy Live last week, in which the chap that was on from the Socialist Party made that clear and started talking about Quebec and all these other bits and bobs. And I would argue against that, and this is the point I was putting to yourself, is you stand and you say, from Nicola's perspective, Nicola and the SNP should really be calling this, and we're all sitting waiting in that day to come. I would argue and make an alternative point to that. I would say that Nicola's waiting for the rest of the country to show when that referendum should take place. And I would suggest that, and I would use that for anyone watching and everyone here attending tonight, is also to say, now is that time to stand together and forget the party politics, get behind the independence movement and get out and start working and doing a job for it. Thanks.
Paul, I'm very, very proud to have Yes's Kilbride representatives along here tonight, because Yes's Kilbride is an example to everyone in Scotland, because I watch the Facebook posts, I look at the campaigning that you guys are doing, the fact that you're on the street every other week, you're there, you're speaking to people, you're engaging with people, you're planning for the future. That's got to be the earmarked role model for the Yes movement as a whole. And the other thing is, you're a very inclusive group. You don't exclude anybody, you include everyone who wants to be involved in the Yes movement. That's got to also be a marker for the future. I hope, in my heart of hearts, there is a spring conference, I believe, coming up for the SNP, and I hope that at that conference there will be an announcement. That's what I'm hoping. And I'm hoping that announcement is going to be that either September's the date, or at the very latest March of next year. I think, personally, the earlier we go, the better for us, because we're better prepared than them. We're better prepared than them. And I don't wish to attack those that are arguing for caution. For goodness sakes, I know you're doing it with the best intentions, but I plead with you to examine the type of material that I referred to tonight, where we were and where we got to, where we are now and where we can go. Examine all of that, and I think the case for going for September is overwhelming. Okay, any other points? There's a wee mic here, folks, and I think you have to bring it up to your mouth.
Just on the issue of food banks, would we have food banks if we still had strong trade unions? I think the answer would be no. And the youth change the world, they change everything, and it's up to the youth to find out how to join a trade union, how to get together, how to fight for more, because there are people now working really hard jobs for £10 an hour. 40 years ago, I was earning £7 an hour. How can they still just be earning £10 an hour for doing a manual labourer's job?
Absolutely. The overriding substance of the point you're making, in my opinion, is that everyone in employment, and even those who are self-employed, should join a union. Join a union, because you are stronger when you're united with other people. Some people say to me, "Oh, Tommy, I don't need a union. I'm working in McDonald's, and if I give out the subscription, it's a lot of monthly payments for me to join a union." And then you hear of somebody getting victimised, somebody getting sacked, and I get it all the time. People contact me, they think I've got a magic wand in my cupboard that I can wave and solve some problems, and they'll say to me, "What can I do?" And my first question is, "Are you in a union?" And they'll say, "Oh no, I never joined." I say, "Well, why not?" Because if you were in a union, you've got automatic legal representation. You've got the strength of other workers behind you, and you've got the strength of organisers behind you. If you don't join a union, you're on your own. And that's when the employers is the strongest, because they can then individualise you, isolate you, and victimise you. So the overriding point we've got to make is, let's build trade union membership. The public sector density in the trade unions, unfortunately, isn't as high as it used to be, but the private sector density is terrible in Scotland. Terrible. We're hardly at 30%, and it's shocking. And you're absolutely right. Trade union density and trade union membership goes alongside wages, because when you've got strong trade unions, you've got better pensions, you've got better wages, and you've got better conditions. That's why they want to get rid of unions. Take an online question and I'll come to Pat.
Perfect. Okay, so next question we've got in is from Dr. Mark McNaught. saying, please ask Tommy, I know you justifiably have negative views of the EU, but would you not agree that it is vital that Scotland remain within the EU single market and regulatory structures before deciding its future relationship with the EU, EFTA or whatever Scotland decides?
I think the most important issue that we need to address here and now is our own independence. So I'm not saying vote independence and leave the European Union. But by the same token, I don't want people saying vote independence and it means we stay in the European Union. We have to address the issue of the white paper, for instance, that was the formation, the foundation stone of the 2014 campaign, perhaps, in retrospect, to our detriment, because the white paper became the touchstone for the independence movement, so that when questions came up about the European Union, everybody said, oh, the white paper says we're going to stay in the European Union. When questions come up about monarchy, oh, the white paper says we're going to keep the monarchy. When the questions come up about currency, the white paper said, oh, we're going to keep the pound. Well, I toured the country. I was very, very proud and privileged to speak to 121 different public meetings in every corner of Scotland, and I used to say, listen folks, we're no voting for the white paper. People used to say to me, oh Tommy, I don't like Alex Salmond, I don't like Nicola Sturgeon, I don't like you. And I would say, well listen, it's not about Alex Salmond, Nicola Sturgeon or me. It's about you getting the house that you've always desired. It's about you getting the opportunity. It's about you getting the opportunity for a wee garden and wee 3 bedrooms, brilliant wee house, and the only reason you don't buy it is because you don't like the bloody wallpaper. Buy the house and change the wallpaper. That's the point. And that's what we have to get over here. So what I would say about that question is, personally, I'm not advocating, and I don't think we should have it as part of the independence movement. I'm not saying I vote for yes means anything else other than independence. And people who say that we should tie the two questions together, I think they're wrong. At least 1/3, at least all of the psephological studies that have been done show that at least 1/3 of the independence supporting population does not agree with being members of the European Union. So wouldn't it be a disaster then to say vote independence means you're staying in the European Union? What we say is vote independence means you're getting the right in the future to decide yourself whether we stay in the European Union.
Just to bring it back to the theme of tonight, the importance of losing the mandate. Can you extrapolate on the effects of what they call the Henry VIII law, wrapped up in the Great Repeal Bill and then rebranded as leaving the EU bill? The importance of what will take place on the 29th, 30th of March 2019 and the effects that ministers will have by that law.
Pat, the issue quite clearly is that the repeal bill includes within it the provision that all of the powers that are to be repatriated from Europe return to Westminster, alongside all of the powers that hitherto were devolved powers of both the Scottish and the Welsh Parliaments will also go back to Westminster. And that was in the original Brexit bill. That's why it was called the Henry VIII power grab. It included something like 131 different provisions. And the Tories said, oh no, it's no, oh, it's no, oh, it's no. And then they said, all right, okay, we'll bring forward amendments. And they brought forward amendments and they said, okay, we don't need this, this, this and that. But there are still 35 major provisions, including in relation to fishing, in relation to food, in relation to leisure, in relation to the environment, that currently are within the confines of the Scottish Parliament that are going to be removed. And critically, the convention which is called the Sewell Convention, which means that Westminster doesn't legislate on any area within the devolved power of the Scottish Parliament without the permission of the Scottish Parliament. That's getting abolished, that's getting ignored, that's getting stepped away. Your man for the Tories, and he's now the Advocate General, was down at the Supreme Court the other day, a guy called Richard Keane, and he argued basically, straightforwardly, listen, we can do what we want. The British Parliament's sovereign. Scotland Act can be overturned tomorrow. And the truth, I mean, I said this earlier, the truth is, constitutionally, he's right. Socially, he might be wrong, because it's a bit like the British Parliament could legislate for no smoking in the streets of Paris. It can do it. Doesn't mean that it's going to happen, because people in the streets of Paris will say, bugger you, we're still smoking. But the British Parliament could do that. And the British Parliament has the right within the so-called British Isles to legislate on anything it wants. That's just the reality of the sovereignty of that British Parliament. The way round that part, quite clearly, is independence, that we utterly rip up the Treaty of Union and we build our new country with our own constitution, democratically discussed and decided, so that everybody's aware of the powers that they have and the responsibilities that they have. But if we don't, Pat, my worry is by March of next year, we might not have a Scottish Parliament that's able to call a referendum. That's the big, big worry for me.
Hi, Yvonne McWilliams. What I was going to say was, I pounded the streets for weeks and months, and the pensions were, and you know, that was the thing. And I'm not talking about pensioners, I'm talking about 50-year-olds who were frightened about their pensions. They had been scared by the civil service and told, you'll not get your pension if you vote for independence. But what I was going to say was, God, I've forgotten now, George MacDonald put it perfectly. The first meeting we had after the referendum, he says, don't worry about it, it was only a trial run.
Here, here. Absolutely, George.
Hi, Cheryl Scott. I agree totally that we need to put everything behind us and get joined together and stop fighting with each other. But I've mixed in my kind of social circles with a lot of no voters, and I talk to them. And it's not that they're against independence as such, it's that they're scared. They're scared of what they are earning now in the union. Will that be affected? What we need to do is get our ducks in a row and have the answers for them. We didn't have the answers in 14. The big things that were pensions, as is mentioned a lot, and the currency, that scared these people. I'm not going to give a pound after you get independence. Who is actually working on these answers? Because I don't see anything getting worked on. I'm not saying it's not, but it's not being talked about. We need to be telling these people, your wealth, your individual wealth is safe if you vote yes. And if they get that, and they've told me this, they will vote yes, but they voted no before because nobody could answer their questions. And there is a rump of them. As we all know, I'm never going to vote anything else but for the union, and not a lost cause. But there's a bit, I'd say 50% of who voted no last time are scared, and we didn't answer their questions.
I think that's a fair enough point, Cheryl. I think the point you've made there about the 55%, let's be clear, there's probably half of that doesn't matter what you say, doesn't matter what facts you produce. Unfortunately, there is I think a illogical tie to Britain and what it stands for, and it's probably much more prevalent among older people. I remember having this argument with some people of the left persuasion, older, and to them Britain didn't mean the Iraq War, and didn't mean the repression in Northern Ireland. It didn't mean Afghanistan and poverty and inequality. It meant standing up to the Nazis. It meant the Second World War. That was their vision. I think that generation are moving on. I think that thought process is less prevalent than it was. But there is a soft no, I would say, of about maybe 40% or so, where if the answers on currency and the answers on wages and the answers on pensions were a wee bit more straightforward and I think a bit more ambitious as well, Sheridan. I felt that we approached the official yes campaign, approached the last referendum with a wee bit of a damage limitation sort of attitude. Don't scare the cattle. Don't say anything that could frighten people. And so everything was about being safe and being safe and being safe. And the truth is, Jeremy Corbyn, from a left perspective, Brexit from a right perspective, Donald Trump from an even more right perspective. If there's one thing you learn about those three phenomena, it is that take things on, head on. Don't be frightened of being radical. Don't be frightened of frightening the cattle. Actually, you might find that people want to hear that. They're fed up with the bullshit. They actually want to hear some radical proposals. And we in a country like Scotland, with the abundance, the absolute abundance of natural wealth and resources that we have, and by the way, as the late Jimmy Reid once said, our oil reserves, our land, our water is as nothing compared to the natural resource of our people that can be unleashed. That can be unleashed. So I think we can win that section. Cheryl, and I said about 40%, we only need to win 10% here, and we've won. And the others that are doubtful, I think we'll convince them once we've got our independence. Any other folks?
George MacDonald here. I describe myself as a communist with a portfolio, and I also say that I belong to every political party that's for independence, without exception. I also would like to introduce the people here to a vision that I've had all my life. That's a socialist vision. And I'm talking about an experiment that was carried out from 1917 to 1991 by the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union, and I visited the Soviet Union summer and winter, including a Burns expedition that we had into Siberia. And my wife Dorothy here could say something about that as well. Oh, I'm not going to ask you to say anything on that score. What I would like to suggest to the people, what I like to say to the people, it is possible to have a socialist world. It happened. For 74 years, the Soviet Union was a socialist country, and it did miraculous things for the humanity of the people of the world. It routed the Nazi fascist hordes that invaded that country at the cost of over 25 million people, Russian people, Soviet people. So what I'm suggesting here, loud and clear, it is possible. It is possible. What happened to the Soviet Union? Some of the miracles, it could best be described, I would say, by saying to the 75% ignorant people of Russia, it took them from wooden ploughs to spaceships. That was socialism in action, and so many other things that it developed. Now, what happened? What happened to the Soviet Union? Did it fail? No, it didn't fail. It was betrayed. So I'm saying it loud and clear. Today, the world has no examples other than possibly Cuba, and dare I say it, North Korea. Venezuela. There are countries that are trying to get along these lines. I'll leave it with that. It is possible to have this vision happen to the world, and we badly need it, and we need to start thinking about it loud and clear. And everything you're saying, Tommy, by the way, I've got to say about you, Tommy, you are the most dangerous guy in England's Britain, and that's why I love you.
Here, Joe.
Thanks very much, George. It's very, very kind words and very much appreciated. I would say that there's not enough time here tonight for us to discuss all of the implications of what George has said tonight, but quite clearly there is always and always will be a battle of ideas, and those ideas are between the ideas of capitalism and the ideas of socialism, and quite frankly I think the world revolves around those ideas, and everything else in between is white noise. The truth is that free market, the rigged free market of big business capitalism, has been dominant for the last 4 decades, there's no doubt about it. But the wheels are coming off the wagon. More and more people are seeing the weaknesses in a system where you can have 100 odd people in the world whose combined wealth is more than 3.5 billion people on our planet. That's the reality of what we've got now. You look at Oxfam's figures, 100 billionaires with more wealth than 3.5 billion people. That's capitalism, and that's not the future I want to build. That's not what I want from our Wayne, and I hope it's not what you want for your Wayne either. There is more than enough wealth in our society, not to drag people down, but to raise people up. That's what we want to do. Couple more questions before we sum up.
Hi Tommy, Bob Russell. Always magic come listen to you, mate. In my capacity, what I do is a job. I'm a driving instructor, right? Do you remember the tax centre in Kilbride?
Yep.
All voted no, because our jobs are safe. What a load of crap that was, right? Now I talked to a lot of folk, and I don't know if you know this. This is supposed to be kept quite quiet within the tax centre. There was an office set up that if Scotland got independence for a tax office in Scotland. And did you know, I don't know if you know this as well, that the Bank of Ireland was prepared to get in negotiations with Scotland about the pound and so forth and so on. I'm an SNP man, I've always been an SNP man. I stood at a meeting, a lot of guys in here are SNP, and we MPs, MSPs arguing a bit out. And I stood up and I said to them, I'm in a room here with people who I am proud to know who want the same thing as I do, and you're all fighting like cats in a bag, and I turned around and walked out the bloody door. Yep. Thanks for that.
Thanks, Bob. I think the message there quite clearly is, as I was trying to emphasise at the start, we have to try and engender a spirit of cooperation, a spirit of tolerance. We are not going to agree with each other all the time, of course we're not. We're all in families. How many times do you fall out with your brothers and your sisters and your cousins and your aunties and your moms and your dads? We're faults. Of course we do. But we all love one another. And we all know that deep in our hearts, we're all after the same things. And I think the Indy Movement has got to develop that robustness, that ability to absorb all the differences, but still promote a message of unity. We all march together for independence, regardless of whether you agree with the person that's marching beside you on the question of currency, the question of monarchy, the question of Europe. These are things that we can decide after independence, as long as we're marching first and foremost for independence.
Hi Tony, Jordan Lindsay. I wanted to address something that you'd said earlier on about us being a sleeping army, and you're right, we've not been as active as we were in 2014 because we've not got a date for a referendum yet, but look what we've got out here tonight, right? And as Rosemary put it, there is a lot that has to be put onto the youth. I think I was 15 when I first joined with you, and we fought against the bedroom tax, and it started in here, you know, that night. So it is possible for young people to rally together, to have a great idea, have a great team and push through, and we won that one.
Absolutely.
We did. So there is no reason to stop another mass group of young people pushing through for a second independence referendum, and I'm all for having it this September, Tommy.
It's a brilliant point, Gordon, and actually it's so apt, isn't it? Because there is a bit of a similarity with what we're talking about tonight, because I remember our first meetings against the bedroom tax. I was very proud to do 90 meetings at the time against the bedroom tax all over Scotland, and at the time the SNP government said there was nothing they could do. There was nothing they could do. After the movement built, the SNP took the decision to effectively subsidise and make sure the people of Scotland never suffered for the bedroom tax. Now, some people will say, with a bit of credibility, they'll say, why should you do that? All you're doing is subsidising the British government's cuts. Well, that's fine, and there's an element of truth there. But you know what? Sometimes that's what you have to do. And the SNP were right to write off the bedroom tax for ordinary people, because they shouldn't be suffering from those cuts. We should do the same, by the way, with the local authority cuts as well. But the point is, the SNP government were compelled to recognise the strength of the movement and the strength of feeling, and they changed their position. I don't think they need the same level of campaign, because I think there is a significant section of the SNP who also believe, like us, that the mandate has to be used. So, in many respects, it might be an easier battle to win, but it still has to be fought. And I would just appeal to anybody who's got links with the SNP in particular, but the wider Yes movement, please contact your SNP representatives and please say to them loud and clear, use the mandate. Use the mandate.
Just another one at a time, folks. Just a couple of comments that have come in online. First one was from David Jameson saying, I agree, Tommy, everyone needs to unite to get the independence. Then they can work to suit themselves. Let's not forget the main aim. Kind of backs up what Jordan's saying there. Helen Sanningham was saying, we're elderly and we voted yes. Why? Because London will not rule my grandbairns. I want Scotland to be free of London. And just the final couple of questions, if you can, Tommy. So, first one was from John Love. He's asking us to ask Tommy if he'll be attending the Hoop event next Friday in Edinburgh. And Nick, also the final question we've got is from Alan Petrie saying, do you think it would be a good idea if the Constitutional Convention was recalled to produce the independence blueprint for the next referendum to ensure it is a Scotland-wide blueprint instead of being a one-party white paper?
Well, to take that last question up first, my worry about that would be the timing that would be required to pull all of these things together. I personally think we only need a short campaign. I think we should fight around the skeleton of the white paper that we already have. We know that there are weaknesses there. We can fill that out in the course of the campaign. The idea of recalling conventions and then trying to produce papers, etc., I think will take us too long. So that's my worry about that. I think the Hoop event, the Hands Around the Parliament, is a brilliant, worthwhile event. I hope everybody who's available can attend. Similarly, the demonstrations that are planned in May of this year, September of this year. Personally, I think, I tried to make the point at the last Hope Over Fear event. I gave the story, and I'll maybe try and finish on this, but I gave the story that I'd heard from Tony Benn many years ago, and you'll remember it, Paul, because you were there and you made a fantastic contribution at the rally, and it was a great rally because it had so many independence campaigns involved, over 21 different campaigns involved, and many of them spoke as well. That's the type of event that we need. Every single week and month. We need to build these events and spread the word with these events. But Tony Benn gave the story that he'd heard about the Canadian child that was trapped down a disused mine, and there was a very limited amount of oxygen in that mine, and the oxygen was running out and the child was in danger of suffocating to death, and everybody in the wee local town decided they have to try and get this kid out or else the kid's going to die. So they got all the ropes that they had and they lowered the first rope and it wasn't long enough, so they lowered the second rope and it still wasn't long enough, and they lowered the third rope and it was nearly there but it still wasn't long enough, until they heard the wee voice coming from the disused mine: tie your ropes together. Tie your ropes together. And frankly, that has got to be the message for the independence movement. We've got to tie our ropes together, folks, because we are much stronger when we do that. I'm going to finish my final point, because George talked about visions there. And I've got a vision about an independent Scotland, particularly the type of independent Scotland I want to see. And the vision's related to the report that was done by the Jimmy Reid Foundation in November of 2016 about the renewal of Trident. And just by way of Cheryl's question, the Jimmy Reid Foundation has done a lot of good papers about things that an independent Scotland can do and develop some good ideas, and people should look into the Jimmy Reid Foundation and look at some of those papers. But they examined the question of renewal of Trident, and that report stands as a fantastic academic education for anybody in relation to the question of nuclear weapons. That report showed that the number of jobs directly linked to Trident amounts to 600 jobs. 600, 520 who are on their missiles and the equivalent, and 80 on maintenance. 600 jobs, that's all that are directly tied to Trident. There are another 3,721 jobs at Coolport. All of the other jobs at Coolport and Faslane, all of them are in relation to other frigates, in relation to other ships. They're not in relation to Trident. So only 600 jobs. If you look at the total amount of jobs that they say that Trident will maintain, the figure they use is 11,520 across the UK as a whole. 11,520 jobs will be maintained. Not a single job will be produced. Not a single job. But they say that if we renew Trident, £205 billion, that's how much, we'll maintain 11,500 jobs. Now, I'm not asking you to do the arithmetic because they've already done the arithmetic. That amounts to £18 million a job. 18 million! In other words, it would be cheaper to take that 11,500 and say, there's $1 million each. We would still save over 160 billion by doing that, folks. My vision of an independent Scotland is when we're walking down Sucky Hall Street, when we're coming out the railway station at Queen Street or Central, those who are standing there shaking the cans, who are currently collecting for the sick children's hospital, or for kidney dialysis machines, or in order to dress up and improve some of the wards and the hospices across Scotland, they won't be there. They'll not be in the streets. They'll be replaced by people, and they'll give out wee missile stickers, and they'll say, please help us, we're donating for Trident, please give us some money. Those that are collecting just now won't be there because we'll invest in those things that matter, instead of investing in weapons of mass destruction, of inhumanity, illegal, immoral weapons of mass destruction. If there's one reason above any, in my opinion, for an independent Scotland, it's that an independent Scotland will scrap Trident. That's enough, brothers and sisters. That's enough. Sorry, I sometimes get carried away. People often berate me for shouting. I apologise. I get carried away. I'm emotional. Folks, I'm going to close tonight's meeting. I'm going to thank each and every one of you for attending. Anyone that is interested in finding out more about Solidarity, please go up to the stall at the back. There'll be a wee collection. I think the room cost a bit of money to hire, and there was some leaflets put out. We're collecting just to raise our cost for that. If you can afford a couple of bob, please put into it. But listen, thanks for coming out. It's been a great meeting, been a packed meeting. This shows there's an appetite for Indy Ref 2. Let's unite behind the slogan, use the mandate. Thanks very much.